Nearly 40% of American women diagnosed with breast cancers, 62% of men test positive for the breast cancer virus, human mammary tumor virus, which could be completely prevented if there was a breast cancer vaccine. Researchers at the Cleveland Clinic have developed a preventable breast cancer vaccine and are seeking FDA approval to begin human clinical trials. Good morning, I'm Ed James and this is Black Almanac. A preventative breast cancer vaccine is a threatening concept to certain organizations that profit from the treatment of cancer, says today's guest, Dr. Christine Horner, a board-certified surgeon and renowned preventative health expert and author best known for a national crusade to pass laws requiring insurance companies to pay for breast reconstruction following mastectomy. Dr. Horner, is so glad that you stopped by and share with our viewing audience. And before we get into the meat of this program, I think I know there's some people in our viewing audience who have benefited from your crusade some years ago. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about that just for a little bit, if you don't mind. How you got started and the importance of what happened then and now.
Sure. So I am a plastic surgeon, and back in about 1993, 94, insurance companies suddenly stopped paying for breast reconstruction following mastectomies. And I just thought that was an incredible, atrocity. And I got a letter from an insurance company saying that they weren't going to pay for my 32-year-old patient to have breast reconstruction done because it was on an organ with no function. I thought, uh-oh, you just said that to the wrong person. So I decided to organize a national campaign to make it mandatory, to pass laws to make it mandatory that insurance companies pay for breast reconstruction following mastectomies. So I worked on it in the states to begin with, and we got 35 state laws passed. And then I discovered a loophole law in the state laws where it really doesn't cover anybody because there's so many different exemptions. And so at that point, I thought we need a federal law. And so I decided that I would meet President Clinton. So I just kept asking everyone, if they knew that I could meet him, and I met somebody that was on the Federal Trade Commission, and ended up meeting with President Clinton and and Hillary, and in a long campaign. But eventually it got tagged onto the budget bill, and it passed in 1998. So now it is a federal law that all insurance companies must pay for breast reconstruction following mastectomies.
Well, I just thought that that's very important that for our viewers to know, because I guarantee you someone in that viewing audience has benefited from that.
Right, yes.
Now, your book, the third edition, this is the third edition.
Yes.
Of Waking the Warrior Goddess.
Yes.
3 editions. Mm-hmm. What's new in the third edition?
A lot is new in the third edition. So the first edition came out in 2005. It actually won the best health book of the year at that time. And when I was going through the medical research, I would find maybe 10, 15 studies on a topic. And there has been an explosion of research in the last several years. So now there's thousands of studies on, various different natural substances and lifestyle issues and so forth. So I added 150 pages of new information based on what our science, shows us now. And some of it's, finer details of things that I had in the original book, but that also expanded with new areas as well.
Speaking of new areas, the breast cancer virus. Mm-hmm. And what is the breast cancer virus?
Yeah, most people haven't heard of it. It's not that well known. But it was actually first identified in 1936. And nobody really did anything with it until recently. And what they found was that it is endemic in areas where the mice in that area have a high incidence of a mouse They call it a mouse mammary tumor virus. So the vector, essentially how people get it, is thought to be contracted through mice. So one of the areas that is highly populated is on East Africa and in the Middle East, and there's much higher incidences of breast cancer there. So some of the doctors who became aware of this, brought in here in the United States, decided to start doing some research on it. And there was a couple of studies that were done in New York where they took tissue samples from women who had breast cancer and looked for this virus, and they found it in 40% of the women who had breast cancer. So the thought is that if we can create a vaccine that goes against that virus, then we might be able to prevent 40% of the breast cancer cases.
So when we talk about who's at risk, this research that talks about this 40%, how did that 40% get called out?
Well, what they did was that when women had their surgery to have their breast cancer removed, they then looked, under the microscope to see what percentage of women had the presence of the virus. And if somebody had a more aggressive form of breast cancer, then it was an even higher incidence. So up to 65% in a particular form of breast cancer called inflammatory breast carcinoma. And there's actually higher levels of that in these other countries that have the high levels of the mouse virus. Yeah.
Is there a vaccine? I asked that question before you answer that. I know there are many charitable organizations out there, and we're going to get to that in a little bit, but is there a vaccine?
They're working on it. So there's actually several different types of vaccines that they're working on. So the first type is one that actually targets the virus itself. And the second type, which actually is a little bit further along, is one that's created out of the Cleveland Clinic, and they have found a protein that shows up in a large number of breast cancers, and so their vaccine is actually targeting that protein, not the virus, but that protein, and they found that it's also effective against people that have the virus. So they're going to start clinical trials on that in 2 years. But usually, because of all the research that's needed and the clinical trials that are needed, we probably won't have one available for 10 years yet.
Well, if there's research that says this appears to be a viable path to go down for this vaccine, and the Cleveland Clinic says who's ahead on this research, why 10 years?
Because our FDA says that we have to do, certain things based on protocols and follow people out, for a number of years so that we know that it's safe. Now, there's all sorts of strange things that sometimes happens in getting prevention approved. And what we look at is that when we look at the dollars that go towards breast cancer, 98% of the dollars go towards new chemicals and treatments, and 2% goes to prevention. So there's not a lot of research dollars that are going to it. And one of the problems that they've had in trying to progress with these studies is that they haven't had enough money, to do that.
I understand that, but I hear something underlying in that.
Yeah.
That treatment is a big business.
It is.
And prevention,
And it takes away from that business. It does, and it was shocking to me when I became aware of some of the dynamics that occur in medicine, where when people have a strong vested interest and a lot of money in certain things, they will really fight to keep that going, and they will prevent actually some very beneficial preventative measures to come out.
Now, you've brought some goodies here.
I have.
And let's share what you got. with the audience and with me.
Sure.
Tell me what's
Sure.
going on here.
Yeah, so when I went through the medical research to see what women could do to help lower the risk, I found that the principal things that were involved in causing breast cancer or helping to protect against it were diet and lifestyle factors. And they have a huge influence. So if you do one thing, healthy thing, you can cut your risk in half. If you do more than one thing, those things can actually multiply up together. They don't add up together. So our diet and lifestyle plays a role in 95% of the cases of breast cancer, and the genetic form is approximately 5%, but you can actually protect against the genetic form with these diet and lifestyle recommendations too. So what I brought is just some of the standouts, just to give some examples. So broccoli, you know, people say eat your broccoli, right?
Except one president said.
That's right. George Bush says, I don't like broccoli.
And I don't have to eat broccoli because I'm president now.
That's right. So I always use that joke. You know, if you're George Bush and you don't want to eat broccoli, what do you do? Well, you know, there's 12 different vegetables in the cruciferous family of vegetables. So broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, many different choices. And all of them have a couple different chemicals in them that have been extremely well researched. They have profound anti-cancer properties to them. So people who eat a high amount of cruciferous vegetables have a lower risk of breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, heart disease. Very, very healthy, you know, for us to consume. So that's one of the most important kind of families of vegetables that we can consume.
And what did you call that family?
Cruciferous. Yeah, cruciferous. Yeah. So the next thing I have is flax seeds. So flax seeds are actually called superfoods by the World Health Organization, and that's because they have so many healing properties to them. And what researchers have found is that they're actually the #1 food that helps to protect against and fight breast cancer. They have about 12 different anti-cancer effects to them. And there were studies done with them where they found that if you grind them up, you can't eat them like this, you don't digest them. So you grind them up in a coffee grinder. You have to consume 3 to 4 tablespoons a day. But when you do that, women who are diagnosed with breast cancer, there's a researcher named Lillian Thompson at the University of Toronto who's kind of the world leading expert in flax seeds, and she found that when she gave them to women who were diagnosed with breast cancer before they had their surgery out, and every single one of them, their tumors shrank by the time they went to surgery. So I started using those with my patients, you know, a decade ago or so, and I had certain patients where their tumors shrank by 2/3 in 3 weeks, just on flax seeds alone.
Wow.
Yeah, so very, very powerful. Yeah. The next food that I highly recommend are mushrooms. So mushrooms are kind of interesting. They've been a part of the medical systems in Japan and China for thousands and thousands of years. And one of the things that we know that they do, probably better than almost any other food or substance, is they help to support our immune system. So our immune system has got all these different cells in there that help to keep us healthy. And they go out and they look for foreign invaders and for viruses and bacteria and cancer cells. And we're actually creating cancer cells all the time. And so if we have a healthy immune system, the cells will identify it and get rid of the cancer cells. The problem comes is when our immune system gets weakened, and that can come from a whole variety of things, from stress, from staying up too late at night, from eating junk food. Sugar, you know, really knocks out our immune system. So all of these things can do that, and when that happens, those are the things that we say, oh, those are things that help to cause cancer, and one of the ways that they do it is to slug the immune system. So eating mushrooms, and there's a variety of different kinds that can do that, but you know, there's this terrible statistic, and that is that when a person in the United States has a heart attack, 90% of people that have had a heart attack in the United States go back to their original diet and lifestyle within 1 year. So I'm like,
Wow.
okay, death is not a motivator, right?
Yeah.
But it actually shows us how hard it is for people to change their diet and lifestyle. So I always recommend that you start with some nutritional supplements first because it's easy, everybody can do it.